Well, hello and good afternoon, and welcome to Praise Talk Show. I we want to thank God for another Wednesday. Indeed, I hope that you're doing great. And believe it or not, we're approaching the end of another month, entering into what we call another calendar season. And yes, the time would be moving forward and springing forward. And I hope that would also have a significant effect in our lives. There's much for us to look forward to for the remaining, quarters of the year. But we are grateful for the gift of life. We're grateful for what God is doing for us on a daily basis, and we cannot take anything for granted. Today, we are back to our relationship matters because it's something that I realize it doesn't matter, our ages, the generations ahead, or the generations coming, or what life throws us at us. Relationships really matter. No man is an island, and there are, issues that are affecting us on a daily basis. Even through this COVID season, people are wanting to connect. People are getting married, people are getting divorced, people are getting issues at home, and it goes on and on and on. The cycle keeps on going on. But I remember somebody asking yesterday, how do we break the negative patterns? How do we stop the negative cycles? Especially those things that we know have been happening and we don't want them to happen again. How do we break them? It all comes under, relationship issues and relationship matters. But I have no other person to bring to our the conversation this afternoon. But the CEO or the founder of the Kingdom Connection community, he's not a new person to Praise Talk Show. But he has, within the community, we have weekly conversations about relationships, and it's amazing the impact that those conversations are having on everyone that attends. And we want to use this as an opportunity also to invite you to those conversations, and also just to discuss some issues that might relate to you as you're watching us today. So please help us to spread the word, invite others to this conversation. Please help me welcome Pastor Bayo Eugene Ajayi.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Pastor
Good
Bayo.
afternoon. Thank you for
Always a
having me
pleasure.
once again.
You're welcome, sir. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah.
It's amazing that the relationship conversations that we have within the community is
Yeah.
ongoing.
Yeah.
It's not like we have one and then there is a break, and then we have another one in 3 months' time. It's every single week dealing
That's,
with relationships, whether pertaining to the man and the wife, relating to parental relationships, sibling relationships, business relationships.
that's
They are
right.
conversations that have been going on and affecting and impacting lives.
That's right.
And new people are coming on board. Sad to say, I'm not sad to say in a way, but I have to call a name. I don't particularly want to call, not in any bad way, because I know that we are having our own platform, which I'd rather promote. One of the trending platforms at the moment, with a lot of people are on, and is building rapidly. That's on Clubhouse. Even
Mm.
Kingdom Connection is now on Clubhouse, connecting with new people. So tell us, what has been the trend, and where are we going with all these relationship conversations, Pastor Lion?
Well, I think that I'll talk in two ways because I could look at it into what's the trend in the world and what's the trend that we are let's say harnessing. So in the world, people are realizing, well, not they're realizing, people have always been relational animals, as they would say that we're social animals. Where I don't believe we're animals anyway, but the saying goes. So social distancing has not distanced relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It has actually created more opportunity for relational proximity.
Mm-hmm.
It's forcing us to come to terms with our needs for relationship and the impact that our understanding of relationship has had on us. So
Yeah.
when you see things like more divorces and more problems, more social domestic abuse, it just lets you know that most people are not prepared for human relationships. So it's
Hmm.
both a challenge and an opportunity. So the trend in the world is that people are going to always reorganize
Okay.
themselves, always going to find other ways to relate. So that's why things like Clubhouse and have now taken are taking root. But what happens is just like a mob action. A mob, if it's not intelligently led, it's just going to be led by the emotions of the moment. So right
Okay.
now, what we're having on social media is like a mob action.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is talking, whether it makes sense or not. If you go on Clubhouse, it's like a jungle out there. But it's there, it's been a jungle. You know, it's been a jungle on Facebook, it's been a jungle of YouTube, it's been a jungle on TikTok, it's been a jungle on Twitter. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a need to conversate. But now we're moving from conversation to relationship. Everybody knows we need some form of community. Nobody has knows what it should look like. And when
Mm-hmm.
there comes a time when in society we feel the need to make a move forward, it's either we just do expend energy trying to do whatever comes to us, or it's done in such a way that actually creates a positive outcome. We call that reformation. So I often
Okay.
say that when there is a problem in society, it leads to either a revolution or reformation. Revolution means we're reacting to something, but we
Mm-hmm.
don't know what to do. We just scattered everything. That often leads to chaos. But
Yeah.
when there's a reformation, it means we're rethinking. So what Kingdom Connection is doing is, and it's not this is not the first time we've started. We have been thinking about the fact that God created us to relate. And interpersonal relationship is one area where human beings are totally inept. We
Mm-hmm.
know how to do business relationships, we know how to do school relationships, we know how to do different other relationships. But what about the interpersonal relationships that creates communities? How should we relate as brothers to sisters? How should we relate as fathers to mothers? How should we relate as husbands to wives? How should we relate as father parents to children? How do we relate as uncles and aunties? So the fabric of relationships that builds community is what has broken down, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're reacting to. So what we actually need to do is start to rebuild our understanding of relationship and to rebuild the relationship from there,
Right.
because relationship is the foundation of creationship. So relationships create value, create life, and there's nobody can get anywhere in this life without relationship. So Kingdom Connections is asking the question: who are you? Who should you be with? What should you be doing with them? What impact should that have? So it's helping people to answer those questions and to connect with the right people the right way, to do the right things at the right time, to get the right result. Even that result is a relationship, like a friendship, a business ship, a marriage ship, whatever it is, or an outcome that benefits society. We're trying to help people to align relationally so that we can have a better society.
Okay. So I hear you saying, let us be intentional about our
Yeah,
connections. Okay.
definitely.
Don't just meet someone, oh, he looks nice, oh, she looks nice. And then, without any form of direction, without any, talking about being informed, without any information, because
Mhm.
amazingly, how a beautiful lady could automatically just look. I remember, it's not funny, it's a matter actually, but I remember one of friends of mine who is a mental health nurse did say, he said you could be looking at a lady walking down the street looking so beautiful. The moment you check their file and realize that she had just chopped off somebody's, let's just say, their private parts, things that, I mean, horrendous things that happen. Instead, you will forget about the fact that she looks so beautiful and you cross over the road because
Mm,
of you are now informed, and so which is causing a lot of the problems that we have in society. We are getting connected without being informed,
definitely.
thinking that it's okay, but it's working against us really. So
Mm,
what you're saying is that even within the community, and really to anyone watching us across the globe, we must be intentional about our connections.
mm.
Be informed, because that information can save you, a lot of hassle in your life, emotional breakdown,
That's,
disappointments. It can save you stress. It can save
that's
you
right.
a whole lot of things,
That's
if you're rightly informed. But what
right.
about people who are now informed but still choose to step in, say, I'd rather take a risk. I don't mind taking the risk.
I found out, and this is, I found out that the human beings, I study human beings a lot, and they don't cease to amaze me. And I wonder what God thinks sometimes in heaven when He thinks of the decisions that we make. Remember a certain lady I knew once who made a very bad decision that cost her marriage. It was a very stupid, silly decision, and we had a chat. That was way maybe 10 years afterwards when the impact had happened. And I said, would you have done anything differently if you knew what you knew now? She said, no. I said, what? I said, so if I'd met you 10 years ago and I told you what had happened now, you wouldn't have. He said, no. He said, because I'm this kind of person, I like to experience something for myself. And I was surprised. And I've met people like that. So what about people who know but still choose to go in? At least they're going in with their eyes open and they have no one to blame. There was a survey done once, I think it was somewhere in Africa, where they asked some ladies that if you had a guy who is a taxi driver, but he's your perfect man, he loves you, he cares for you, take care of you, but another guy is a millionaire and he will give you, £1,000,000, and then, but he's going to beat you up, who would you go with? Most of the ladies decided that they're going to go with the millionaire. And it was going to beat you and say, yeah, for $1,000,000. But guess what? When such people get in that kind of relationship, they'll be the first to get on TV and say, well, he's a wife beater, he's doing that. So many times, I believe people know exactly what we get ourselves into. I don't think that in most cases we don't know. So, but God gave us such a powerful tool. It's called choice. But what I said to people, when you choose a decision, you also choose the consequences. Don't choose a decision and now scream about the consequences. The scripture says, happy is the man who does not condemn himself in what he allows. So I think we just need a more responsible society that would say, I made that choice and I chose the consequences also. So because we want to blame people for the consequences of the choices that we make. So I think that people need to reset and for us to start owning and become responsible for actions. Now, I'm not saying, well, if you know and you chose, then don't harass anybody in the future when the consequences bite you. Now, if you didn't know, and then maybe there's some help for you because you can then make different choices. But for such people, there's very little we can do to help.
Okay, thanks for that. And if you're just joining us, we've got Pastor Ajayi of the Kingdom Connection community. We're looking at relationship matters this afternoon on Praise Talk Show. If you're joining us on YouTube, would like you to subscribe to the channel so that when we do come on, you'd have a notification, same as on Facebook. Please feel free to drop a comment and I'll try and check them out before the end of the show. Looking at relationships, Pastor Ajayi, coming back to you, sir, I'm wondering, do people really think that they need help when it comes to relationships? Even though we see all the chaos, we see all, there are people at certain ages of life that they want to settle, people who have been in, I wouldn't say countless, but quite a few relationships that have not been, they haven't got to the end, the desired end. We've had people who've met people, but they have still not got to the desired end. Do people really think that they need help?
No, they don't.
Okay.
And I think most of the time in my line of work, the people who will usually come for some sort of help, and usually it's not even the help to determine if they are ready for a relationship or not. It's usually help to meet somebody. So there's a sort of arrogance we have when we reach puberty and we have been post-puberty for like 10 years that we feel like a man. Or if you're a woman, you feel like a woman. And what makes you feel like a man is that you look at yourself in a mirror in the bathroom and you look and it looks like you're mature when you look at your genitals, and a woman looks at herself and think, I'm a woman because I've got what a woman has on my chest and everything. So we have a false sense of maturity that drives us to make decisions. And but the fact that you mean very well, you can mean well when you jump off a cliff and mean to fly, but your nature will correct you that your meaning and capacity. So and that's what happens. So many times it's often easier to help those who want to connect to people because they know that something may be wrong, but they don't know what is wrong. But they feel like, I think I'm old enough to get married now. Why I'm not getting married? They don't realize that there are many things that we need to correct internally. We look at issues of maturity in every aspect of life. The fact that we're intellectually mature does not mean, or biologically mature doesn't mean we're socially mature, emotionally mature. Or there's just so many things that we don't think about. That's one. So for most people, they think they got it sorted. Most men will think, well, I know how to speak to a lady and to get her to like me. They think that's all there is to a relationship. And most women think, okay, I can say yes, I can have sex, and that means I can have a relationship. But they realize internally that that's not all it takes. But we still deceive ourselves to go ahead. But I think for most people who are married, they're the ones that are most deceived.
Okay.
Because the fact
Because
that
they've got there right, so they can say, well, I'm now married,
I'm now
and
married.
so I
So
must have had something right.
exactly. So they start comparing
Okay.
themselves to themselves that, okay, I'm married now. I'm kind of good. That other lady's married. We're kind of better than those who are not married. I have a child. I have 2 children, 3 children, 4 children. I am now mature. And particularly as you're maturing age, you assume that age means wisdom. So there was I'll give you an experiment that I did one time. Because I like to do this. If I want to help people, I need to allow them to know they need help. So there's a group of people that I got together, young marriages from less than 5 years to marriages over 40 years. Sat them in a room and asked them a question. I said, how many of you believe that everything about marriage, you need to know about marriage, about your wife, about your husband, that you do know them right now? And you could see the smirk on their faces like, come on, Pastor Bayo, come on. We would be here if we didn't know it. I could see that on their faces. I said, score yourselves. Most of them scored themselves over 95%.
Okay.
And I started to ask them questions, simple things like, how well do you know men? Even the men, how much do you know yourself as a species? How well do you know yourself as yourself? How
Mm-hmm.
well do you know the woman? How much do you know this woman? How much
Mm-hmm.
do you know about parenting? How much do you know about the seasons of life? How much do you know? By the time I finish a set of questions, I call it the MOT, and I ask them to score themselves. How many of you feel you know all there is to marriage? All of them score themselves below 5%.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just 1 hour conversation. So, and that's what I find is that there's this false sense that we measure the wrong things to mean we have a healthy marriage, that we
Mm.
have a healthy home just because I feel good, I've got money, I've got a house. So we are not really investing in the relationship that builds society and the future. We're involved in things that are actually demolishing society and community, and we're actually celebrating those things. So when it comes to the importance of relationship and culture and legacy, we have
Mm-hmm.
a lot to learn. So many people who are married don't feel that they need to know because they feel they can do basic things like we can talk, we can have sex, we can have children. All of those things don't take skills to do at all. You know, some people are like when I tell that, well, to have sex, chickens do it, goats do it. So the things that we actually think make for a good marriage, the fact that you can have babies, anybody can have babies. The fact that okay, you can
Mm-hmm.
keep your home, anybody can do that, but to actually build society and build community, that's what takes skills. And most of the humanity are clueless, and that's the problem we have in society today. People don't know how to relate anymore.
Mm.
We're socially awkward, emotionally obtuse, um, and socially immature.
Okay. Well, we went to school.
Oh yeah, we intellectually that's all we have. We have a degree, but in the things that matter, we never learned.
We grew up in homes.
Oh yeah, we grew up in houses, not in homes. Different kind of houses. Yeah, you know,
Okay.
I like to say that way just to show that it's different. Of course, people can that's semantics, but we all grew up in houses. But if home was a perfect unit, the way God wants it to function, and you see, no matter how perfect our homes is, I say this to people just for us to realize that no matter how perfect it is, Adam and Eve had a broken home, even though they still has a household. So because God was removed from the system, they caused a fracture. So every family after that has a problem. So no matter how perfect your family is, it still has a degree of brokenness. That's what I try. So I'm not knocking anybody. I'm just saying no matter how perfect, realize that it's not as perfect as Christ wants it to be. That's all. So once you realize that, it gives room for improvement. I hope that no one's going to stone me after this interview, and you're going to invite me again.
Okay. So, so we educated yet still having issues. Okay,
Yes.
grew up in homes. I'll still say, even so you say houses. Still have issues. Okay, we have been some form of society, but yes, we still have issues.
Mhm.
So where do we start if we are going to resolve these relationship issues around us? Because it's not just the relationship with the man and the wife, it's
Mm.
relationship at work, it's relationship with our
Yeah,
children, it's relationship with the business partner, it's
exactly.
relationship with the neighbors, it's
Exactly.
relationships everywhere. Where do we go from where we are?
Well, I'll use the analogy of somebody who wants to cook. Let's say, what you want to cook? You want to make cake. So I know as much as to know that cake is made from flour and eggs and water and flavors. So if we find out that we are turning out bad cakes, where do we go? We have to look at the ingredients first. Then, if we have the right ingredients, the next thing we want to look at is the process, isn't it? So, in this particular case, it's those two things that we need to look at. Where do we start from? The ingredients of every relationship is a very cute component called man and woman. And that is anyone listening to this is a man and a woman. So much time is that for us to think beyond that sort of sense that we have of the world around us to actually look at ourselves and ask ourselves the question. Let me change start from you. You as what? Not as your name. As a man and as a woman, look beyond your name to your nature and ask of
Mhm.
yourself the question: are you functioning as a man and woman should? If you can answer that question, every other thing, because there's no amount of a flour that has become moldy, an egg that has become rotten, and they're trying to change cake. You can't change the cake you make if you don't change yourself first. If the egg doesn't become good and the flour doesn't become good, you're also going to get bad cake, no matter how great a cook you are. So we are part of the process. So the first thing is, as a man and as a woman, the very first relationship we are supposed to have in this world is that with a parent. So as a man and as a woman, what is your understanding and what did you learn when you were a son and daughter?
Mhm.
Was your education complete? And that education means your perception of man and woman, because many of us grew up in homes where things are less than ideal and we have been patterned after the image of the things we experienced. So you as a son, did you get your lessons right? Because if you don't get lesson as a son and a daughter right, you will miss the lesson of a brother and sister.
Yeah, but how would they know? Because it's interesting that you should say this, and you ask the questions. Did you get your lessons right? Just looking at, for example, the education system. You go through a whole year of, academic level or academic, training or education, and then you are tested. Somehow, there's regular tests to assess the how the child is learning, to assess what they're taking in. The teachers will give feedback to the parents, give feedback to the children. But when we look at the school of life, we don't have tests
Yeah.
regularly like that, except when you get into a placement, probably error. And this is where, sorry to say, not sorry to say, but this is where the conversations within the community, I constantly, I'm almost now going to sound like a scratch record, are very important, and I don't take them for granted, because the regular conversations around relationships are helping us,
Naturally.
to bring our minds to things that we might not necessarily be thinking about, or taking time out to assess. But even with that, how is one going to be tested to say, did she get that or did she not? Did she understand it? What do we need to do? So how would that be now fair for you to talk about the school of life, and then us being assessed? Because in the education system there is measures that are put in place to test, but we are not really tested. Are you 10? So do you know how to do this checklist? Daddy, daddy, da, as a parent. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I totally
How
get
do
you.
I know that at my age I should have been doing this and I've got it right and I'm where I should be?
Mhm. And you're right. And you actually helped because, like you said, if I found out, and this happened to me, this is very funny. Life has taught me many lessons. I play several instruments. So the musical instruments, I mean. So when I learned to play the guitar, and I think I've shared this before, I don't know whether on your platform. So somebody taught me and told me they taught me to play a particular guitar style. So he said, I've taught you, and that's everything you need to know. And it was absolute nonsense that he taught me, but I didn't know. I was confident. I was, I went for a particular concert. I told the guys, I said, I can play this guitar absolutely perfectly. And they gave me the stuff. And when we started playing the songs, I knew something was wrong, but I did not know what was wrong. It's like you know something is wrong, but you don't have the wisdom to even, because I just realized I don't know how to play this instrument. What he taught me was absolute rubbish. It's like teaching me Baba Black Sheep, and that Baba Black Sheep will work with every song. And that's the only thing I could play. And then you're now singing with dynamics, and you're not realizing that I don't know. Then what I now did was to tell myself, okay, something is wrong. I actually asked one of the gentlemen there, I said, well, I will need to start learning from you. Teach me what you know. And that began my journey in music. I would say the same thing. If you find out you missed lessons in your former school, let's call that the school of life,
Okay.
enroll in a new school, a family. Now, most people say enroll in a church, but you see, you have to be on, or you have to understand the specifications of the school that will teach you. It's not everything that's called a school that is a school. There are different
Mm.
schools. There are schools of catering, there are schools of music, there are schools of theology.
Yeah.
What school do you need?
Mm.
So, for instance, you might say that, okay, if I can go to any church. No, every church cannot school you in every area of life, because each church, each community has its own specialty. So if you need to learn how to be a man and a woman, be part of a community, and that's what we're trying to create with Kingdom Connections, because we have people from different churches, different backgrounds. We're creating a learning environment where we can all learn together and ask ourselves the question, what does it look like to be a man and a woman?
Mm.
We also say males and females are born, men and women are made, husbands and wives are trained. So if you come in a community that thinks that way, then you're coming in understanding the fact that your thinking will be challenged, but you're with other people who are challenging their thinking and they're improving their relations. So, for instance, within Kingdom Connections, I challenge the men and the women to think of the four aspects, to think, how am I a son? Of course, maybe you're old now, your mommy can't call you daughter again, but God can still call you daughter. God can. So
Okay.
you're still a son of God, you're still in a household. We're still training you to think like a son, to think of a father. God is your father in heaven. Secondly,
Mm-hmm.
we train you to see your brothers and sisters as sisters. We don't even start saying, come and get married until you have learned to treat people as brothers and sisters. Because if you don't get that right, you will miss the husband and wife lesson. So, number three, you then start to understand what is the role of husband, what's the role of wife within a larger community, and then what's
Mm-hmm.
the role of father and mother. Now, if we get this right, most of us don't need training on how to work in our workplaces because they already teach that in school. What we need to train about is how to relate in other aspects of life. So I would say to anyone out there, if you are not privileged to join Kingdom Connections, find a family, not just a congregation of people who come on Sunday. There has to be more than that. That will not change you. Relationships, the world will change you. You need a relational context where your concept of manhood and womanhood is challenged, and where specific skills are discussed and are applied to help you become better. Because definitely we're all being trained what we should have been taught when we're kids. Nobody told our parents, so it's not their fault. But now, we Bible says the time of ignorance God winked at. But now we should all repent. We should all realize where there are gaps in our learning and come around a community. Bottom line, you cannot train yourself to be a man, is what we're saying. You will always have blind spot. Join communities of Christians who are thinking the right way about what's God's original intention and how does it want relationships to work.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Persebian. And I have to just remind us, like I said, within the Kingdom Connection community, there are conversations that are held every single week.
Every
And
week.
all of this are building blocks to, helping us to prepare towards having greater relationships anywhere we find ourselves, because life is relational. You cannot live life without having a relationship with anyone, and it starts from our parents, like you said. There's a God factor, a part of it, which is very even more important than even our parents, and that is definitely promoted within this community. But life is clock is ticking, Pastor
Mm.
Baya.
Mhm.
And there's an urgency with, especially those of us as women. People could say, well, a man has more time to, when he gets to a place to discover that maybe he hasn't had it right. He can always, take his time. And unfortunately, you hear a lot of people say when men get older, they look for younger ladies. The reason why they do that, I believe, is that them thinking about the childbearing factor. It's not just that they're looking for a naive woman. They're looking for someone that they're looking at. Okay, this woman might not have an issue having children for me, especially if they're at an older age where they have not had any. It would be a different dynamics, I believe, with somebody who's had children. But when it comes to a woman, you get to a place where you realize, well, life has been failing, relationships have been failing, but I understand what you just said. Probably in that category of people that need to learn. But like I said, my body clock is ticking. I'd love to have children. And I don't really have much time to go through this long process. What do you say to those people?
Well, it's quite simple and also a little bit complex.
Okay.
It depends on who I'm talking to. Now, if I was talking to some lady off the streets, because there's an answer for everybody who just says, I want to get married and blah, blah, blah. And I'll say, no problem. We can help you with that. We'll assess your situation, get and mix and mingle with people and see what happens. But for those ones, I tell them that's the buy one, get one free. Just pick it up and see what happens. But I would be speaking to somebody who is a Christian, for instance. I'll be speaking to their nature and their culture internally, and I'll be saying to them that your life is not defined by marriage, first of all.
Okay.
That the first thing, because what I found out when I started Kingdom Connections, what I found out was I started with a group of ladies actually who said, "Oh yeah, we're getting old, we want to get married." And I said to them, I said, marriage is not the first thing you need. Let's come around, let's talk, let's meet other people, change the way you think as a woman. Eventually, other gentlemen came. I challenged them, change the way you think as a man. But as they began to grow in fellowship in that community, they now realized that most of what they wanted out of marriage, they had it in the community. You want affirmation? You now have a group of ladies and gentlemen who like you for who you are, who really want to be around you. They were spending, just like in the community right now, we're spending a lot of time together. They now realize, okay, my need for affection and loneliness has been cured in this community. So what next? Oh, then I have good friends. All right, I'm able to actually develop a lot of businesses started from that, a lot of friendships. So men, women coming together in clusters, being friends, going out, even protecting one another from wolves, if you know what I mean. There's a times that some guys will say, well, you don't hang around our sisters, get away from them, stuff like that. So that when they now came to the point of marriage, they married for the right reasons. But usually when people say my body clock is ticking, there's a sense of desperation, and I just want to tick that box to say I'm married. I don't care what is there, and often you're going to make a mistake. To someone who's thinking, okay, so let's say your biology is not able to produce a child now. There are many children in the world, and they have as much rights to be in the world as the child you give birth in your womb. So as a Christian person, the fact that whether you have a child or not does not preclude you from motherhood. Eve was called the mother of all living before she even had a child. So if you think that motherhood was only attached to what you have from your womb, you're wrong. And I'm not even suggesting you go and adopt the child on your own. But when you're part of a community of other Christians, whilst you're growing and meeting men and women and you're becoming friends and brothers, there will be many, many, many young children that can benefit from the grace that God has given you. And whilst you're doing that, who knows who you might find along the way. So I often help Christians to think based on our nature, and that when we seek first God's kingdom truly, every other thing is added. I've not seen, I've seen so many different examples of people who did what I just said, and along the way, they were just delighted with what God is like. Wow, they were, even when the husband came, they were basically saying, "Oh, maybe that husband, maybe you can go and marry somebody else." They were so engrossed in helping other people that even when their own husbands or the wives came, they were trying to pair them up with somebody else because they were so engrossed in the life. So I'd say that person should first try to fix themselves. Realize that there's not a shortage of men and women. There's not a shortage of love and opportunity. There's just a shortage of wisdom and knowledge. So if we start to apply ourselves differently to life, we get a different response.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Baya. Another thing that you mentioned, which I wanted to ask about, Somebody watching us right now, how can they connect to the community, by the way?
Okay, yeah. So we have different steps to it, and we've done that to help many different Christians because we're all in different sort of social troughs and high places in life. We try to make it easy so that no one feels because most people just think it's just another church. It's not a church. It's actually and we're just socially engineering a community, and or let's say not even engineering, facilitating community. It should be such a thing that you can work with where you are. So I'd say first of all, go to christiansocials.com or .net, christiansocials.network, sorry, and register. At least that brings you into a forum where you can learn about what we do. If you're on Clubhouse, search for Kingdom Connections in bracket KC, and then join us on every Saturday. This Saturday we're actually having a conversation, and it's titled Kingdom Matchmaking: Connect and Marry in 5 Simple Stages. And I mean that because there's actually a process to help people who are on that path, to get married. The shortest one we had was 7 months from hello to I do. So that from saying hello to that person to getting married, and they're still married today by God's grace. So that's also there on Clubhouse. On Telegram, we also have a Kingdom Connections Telegram group. I don't know if we can send that out to people. It's on Telegram. Maybe we can make it searchable. We'll try to make it searchable today.
Can search for
Yeah.
They can search for it on Telegram.
You can search for it on Telegram and come on board. We just want to invite you first to a conversation. Once we're talking, then we can see what the next steps are. So we have what we call KC Let's Talk every Monday. You find out on Eventbrite, Kingdom Connections Let's Talk. We have Let's Talk events in London. We have Let's Talk events in America, and we have Let's Talk events in Oceania. We're going to start Let's Talk events in Africa soon. We're doing our best to connect 1 million Christians together in a very short time, and that includes yourself. So we have so many events curated for that, and we're going to be having some very focused events to really help people to connect together with people they would love to be with. But like I said, it's not like buying a food in Tesco. It's not just like come, I click, get to the counter, pay for it. There's a process, and part of the process is you. Even if the guy or the lady that you're meeting is good, the guy is, are you great for them? Are you the person? So it's really about you being the person that wants to create the kind of family you want. So be honest with yourself. So we're investing a lot in your transformation, in your development. If you can't accept that in yourself to change, it will cause a lot of problems for you, not for anybody else. Because I found a lot of people come in and they assume that just by being around they're changing. But because that's not been the case, it's caused a lot of hassle for people unnecessarily.
Thank you for mentioning that, because that is so important. We're so quick to look for what, know what we're looking for, but are we what other people are looking for? It always reminds me of where Jesus says that, we should really start with ourselves. And if society was to really prepare, every one of us was to think of, am I desirable, instead of what am I desiring, I think we would have positioned ourselves in a much better place, and life would not be self-centered, we will not be selfish, but we would, be happy to extend an arm of love even to strangers. And you just don't know, Eliezer that met Rebecca, he was a stranger that met another stranger, and that was a helper of destiny. Not that she married him, but he had someone, that had been prepared for a wife. So in life, we just have to keep on preparing ourselves. You just don't know where you would meet someone, just throwing that out there to encourage someone. Even in this lockdown, people are meeting people, new connections are being established, conversations are going on. So we must be proactive, and not let the world, sink you into a false place that doesn't exist. By God's grace. But I'm just looking at time factor. We don't have much time. You mentioned something about people being in marriages and having that false sense of maturity because they have achieved, in quotes, what one be looking at. You got married, you got children, you have a husband, probably you have a property, or you rented, whether it's rented, whatever it is, and life is moving on. Most times people do hit the rock in a hard place, even in such situations when things are not managed well? What support is there for those that are in there that might just, for some reason, just realize that they thought they were ready, but they're not, and now they need help? Not
Okay,
that the
so
marriage is breaking down, they're
yeah,
just crying out for help.
yeah. So I often tell people, I say, if you don't measure what you value, you will value what you measure. So what that means is, if you set on a project and you don't tell yourself what that project is really about, anything will go along the way. Anything will go. So a lot of people get married not knowing what the end point should look like. So that's why they accept anything along the way as success. So two things that I ask families to look at is, where would, so if they look wider at society and they were very honest with themselves and they look for the next 10 to 50 years, or let's say 50 years, what will be the imprints of their home on the rest of society? What legacy are they leaving? If we have to remove the fact that they bought 2 or 10 houses and they are buying the best cars and they are able to go for holiday, what legacy are they leaving? What kind of children are they leaving for society? What will those children become? When parents start to think about that, it will reprioritize the things that they do. Most of the things times we're thinking, and now, how do I feel now? And that's what demolishes the future. It will change how the husband and the wife think, how they allocate their resources. Some people, for instance, when they're married, it's really about a career. The husband is in career and the wife's in career, and they're not asking yourself, why are we working our backsides off, to make all of this money? They don't even know why, because all things go into the present. So what I do, aside for those who are coming to marriage, we have a process in place. There's a course and there's a coaching program. We call it 5 stages to dating. So the 5 stages and 7 P's approach that guarantees your dating process. It guarantees that you will ask the right questions, have the right answers, and make an informed decision. That's what it guarantees. It doesn't tell you Mr. Right or Mrs. Right. You will decide when you know what you need to do. Then when you come into marriage, we help, there's so many areas we help marriages to find what their vision, what their purpose is, and what their mission is, and how they want to accomplish it. And we teach them a particular module of conversation. We call it the 3 rooms of conversation, which helps couples to really investigate whether they're having all the right conversations. There's a lot of silencing going on in relationships. So when, because you want to avoid issues, you just get on with it. So most marriages are like a minefield of don't ever touch that, don't ever do that, rather than an open field of opportunities to grow the future. So why that happens, because people don't understand how to have the right conversations in the right headspace and manage it. I think I've shared that on your show before. So about the 3 rooms of marriage and the I think the 5 seasons of marriage. So the seasons of marriage that everybody will go through. Did you map your seasons? Do you even know about the season? You don't know about the seasons. You can learn about the seasons so that you can learn.
No, we haven't talked about the seasons. I think we'll have to have another session where we talk about the seasons. I know you talked about the rooms, the business room, the relational room, and the
project room.
Project room. Okay.
You got it. Yeah. So there's that. So bottom line, there's courses available, there's coaching available, and there's community available. Those are the 3 things that we offer. On top of that, there's some form of care also. So there's courses, there's coaching, there's care, and there's courses, there's coaching, there's community, there's care, and there's counsel. So for those who are coming from hello to I do, we have those 5 for them. For those who are coming from I do to we do. Now, let me tell you about I do to we do. Most couples, after they said I do, they thought that was the end of it. No, it was the start of becoming a we do, when there's perfect synergy between the both of you, such that you're able to function as one unit, doing what God created you both to do. Many couples don't know what that looks like. So I do to we do helps you and brings you into community with other people on the same journey with you, so that your marriage can be productive beyond the fact that you made money, you had children, you went on holidays, and you grew old and died. So it's really giving purpose to every form of relationship.
Okay, so there is support for those that are single. and there is support for those in marriages,
Definitely.
because one of the promises that Jesus gave is that he would not leave us helpless.
That's right.
So we must never leave ourselves in a state where there is no help,
Yeah.
that we can't seek out for help. It's so short a time that we have this afternoon, but I hope that this conversation has been of benefit to someone. We want to invite you to the Kingdom Connection Clubhouse. You want to remind people where they can find you
Saturday
on
12.
Clubhouse as well? Yeah?
Saturday at 12 o'clock on
Saturday
Clubhouse.
at 12 o'clock. Okay,
Yeah.
Saturday
So
at 12 o'clock on
anybody
Clubhouse.
can come in, and right now I think this will interest people, because one of the areas that we feel that the church has not been able to deal with is those who have special circumstances, like divorced, separated, widowed, yeah, this kind of people. So even people in that sector can also come, and there's also some form of support that's planned. So just come on Saturday. Let's talk first, and then let's see where we can go from there. So it's at 12 o'clock on Saturday on Clubhouse, GMT.
Okay, another question that everybody would be asking, even though I've got 1 minute more with you, is Kingdom Connection a dating agent, a dating site, a dating community?
It's not a dating community. Kingdom Connections looks at three aspects of our lives and brings them together. Our lifestyle. That's why I said to you, to have great relationship, you have to have a great lifestyle. If your lifestyle is bad, you have bad relationships. Then we look at your relationships in every sector of life, whether as a son, as a daughter, as a parent, we just want to improve relationship generally. Of course, because we know the romantic relationships is very important. That's why we seem to talk a lot about it, because through that we can then look at other areas and help you. And also we connect people around purpose. We have a lot of projects we get Christians to do together. What joy to meet Christians locally that you're relating with, and to transform your local community. So it's around relationship, lifestyle, and purpose. But then, if your question really is, should Kingdom Connection have a dating site? I'm thinking about it, but it will depend on, the sort of response and the quality of the people. As the quality, good quality men and good quality women happens, then we can have a dating site for that kind of people. Because right now, if it's just a buy one get one free dating site, a lot of people do that. But when we start to have a lot more people who are thinking differently, who want a different kind of connection that is mature, that is looking after all of these things, it's in the pipeline. But I don't just want to do a run of the mill. Come on, click a button, let's go get a meal, and then test ourselves over the night and see what happens. Kind of, I don't want to do that. But we have it in me. But it has to be a dating of men, kingsmen and kingswomen, who are already maturing in their understanding. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, that does answer a question. I know that if you were to do a dating site, it would be one with a difference anyway. But thank you so much for your time, Pastor Bayo. I wish we had a bit of a longer time. I think we should have a conversation on Instagram. So please stay tuned. I would come over to you shortly with that. We're going to carry on this conversation on Instagram probably for another half an hour. Reason being because I think there are people that we need to reach out to concerning these relationship conversations. It's not like you said, buy one get one free. There are so many issues within us, and we only get to discover that when reality hits us, and then unfortunately at most times at that place things end up going wrong, where you would have just had an opportunity that you could have taken advantage of. So thank you so much for your time, sir, because we're going to log off right here on the LCBN TV network. We want to thank you for hosting us this afternoon. Hope that you have been inspired by today's conversation. Watch out for Praise Talk Show next week, same time, same place. Stay blessed and make sure that you stay connected with brethren, with Christians, with people that would help you, have better relationships. Until then, I love you all. Take care and bye for now.